Hey, it's your old pal Slim. And this is a special bonus episode of 70mm, a podcast for film lovers. As always, I'm joined by famous artist Danny Haas.
I know we DM'd about this, but how about Sean Patrick Flannery's hair? Don't even put the fedora on, buddy.
And spiritual advisor Protolexis.
Yeah, to think he's at university, but he has seen more action than I have at this point in his life.
As we near the end of Indiana Jones, we knew we had to go back to the 90s to talk about the TV series Young Indiana Jones and the one episode that Harrison Ford appeared in as Indiana, the Mystery of the Blues. Enjoy! Indiana Jones month at 70mm rolls on. We thought, why not go back to where it all started? The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones Chronicles television series / movies / I don't know what the heck was going on back then.
The 90s.
Do you remember back then? Were you watching this show on like Saturday nights or wherever it started? Danny?
I remember catching a few of them. But I don't remember. I never watched them all, and it wasn't a thing to watch them. I don't even remember anyone really talking about them until I was probably older, and I remembered that I'd probably seen a couple.
Proto, do you remember the show at all?
I don't remember. I mean, I never watched it live, but at some point in the 90s, I was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
A handful of episodes here and there.
So we decided to go back to the one episode that Harrison Ford had starred in the bookends of an episode called Mystery of the Blues. This is not on Paramount Plus, America's network, America's streaming platform. They just added like 22 episodes, and for whatever reason, this is not one of them. With that said, if you do a little YouTube searching, you too can watch all 2 hours of this episode / movie / thing that aired, I believe, in 1993. The one thing I want to say before we even get into this.
Let's talk.
I did some research before we recorded, and I sent a screenshot into our DMs about an old man Indiana Jones that apparently existed when it aired as episodes, but Lucas removed him for the collected editions. Is that true, Danny? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah. So the old Indy, I do find it weird because I feel like it was the reason it set up the show. So George Hall played 93-year-old Indiana Jones still teaching. And the show would set up where he would be asked like a question and he would reminisce a time in his history, but always ended up being a time when he was younger than the 3 movies. And so he would tell the story. And so he'd be in the bookends in the beginning and end of the episode. And it was, I patched up George Hall, Indiana Jones.
I was researching this episode, and then I saw that like they replaced, in the UK, he existed in this episode, but not in the United States version when they aired it. So I went on YouTube to find footage of this guy playing old Indiana Jones because I didn't have any idea this was a thing. And he exists in the 90s. It's like real time. So the first episode, this old man Indiana Jones interrupts these these brats who are trying to leave a museum because they think it's so boring. And they're the most 90s looking kids in history.
Junk.
Why, some of the greatest adventures of my life are sitting in this museum.
Maybe it's cool for you, dude, but we think it stinks.
Hold on, I'll clobber you.
Be cool, man. Be cool.
You from the city? Me, I'm from just across the river.
Big deal.
Come on over here. Maybe you'll learn something.
And Indiana Jones is like, what are you young whippersnappers doing? You don't know anything about all this junk. It's so weird. Like, just Google like old Indiana Jones George Hall on YouTube and have your mind blown. Do you remember any of that stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely. The eye patch. Love it. Love old Indy.
The end of that first episode, I scanned to the end to see what happened. He sends those kids on their way. He tells a story about the jackal or whatever. And he's at the staircase, this marble staircase at this museum, looks around, the music's playing. He gets and hops onto the railing and slides down the railing ass first. And it ends.
That's Indiana.
So, Proto, what is a Mystery of the Blues? You want to walk us through what we're covering here today, available on YouTube?
Mystery of the Blues, we first see Indiana Jones on the run in 1950 with his friend. They have stolen a sacred relic of some kind of American Indians. They're trying to escape. They find shelter inside of a cabin, seemingly abandoned. And inside this cabin, as luck would have it, is a soprano sax. And that sets off Indiana Jones to tell a story of when he learned to play the soprano sax back in 1920, when he was just a young whippersnapper himself, going to the University of Chicago and bussing tables at a restaurant. And then after work, going to listen to whatever jazz he could find. So he befriends a jazz musician. I think it's Sydney.
Sid, yeah.
And Sydney kind of shows him the ropes a little bit. And really, for the first half hour, we're just following Indy as his love for jazz music and his desire to learn to play the sax grows. And we have no idea where this is going. But there's many ups and downs, him trying to play, him getting laughed off the stage, being, saying this isn't jazz. But then his friend Sydney really guides him, says, you focus on Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And if Indy doesn't master Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, it'll be the end of him. So he does, and he learns to play it, as jazz. He jazzes it up on that sax, and he really has his moment where he's once again invited onto the stage, and he plays the jazz version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on his soprano sax. But then we have a murder mystery on our hands when the owner of the restaurant he works at is murdered inside the lobby. And we're really shift into the story of Indy trying to solve this murder mystery with his roommate, Elliot Ness, and his seemingly his friend, Ernie Hemingway, a little beat reporter in Chicago at the time. So they go on an adventure. They get into all kinds of mischief. They pretty much solve the mystery and who is responsible for the murder, it being one of Indy's pals who is in town, a little Al Brown, a.k.a. Al Capone. And it, they take it to the police. It falls through because the police are in on it as well. Of course, they have handshakes with the mob at this time, and they all come away a little more disillusioned, just as disillusioned as someone who plays the blues. And that's the Indiana Jones and the Mystery of the Blues.
Did it?
I don't remember anything about this television show. Like literally anything. I remember you, Danny, talking about this television show. I kind of know it existed, but this must have just been out of my purview watching it Saturday nights. But this seems like something that I would want to stay up and watch as a kid. Like, 2-hour movie, young Indiana Jones, the kind of hijinks they get into. I'd want to ask to stay up late until like 9 o'clock to watch this.
For sure.
What was your first intro to the show? Were you a kid watching this and then you eventually collected the tapes, Danny?
Yes to the eventually collecting the tapes. I remember my parents watching Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And Young Indy came on after that. And so, but it was so late that I was never allowed to stay up late enough to finish them. So I'd watch like the beginnings of a few, and then I just gave up trying to watch them because I could never finish them. So that's my only memory of it. Other than that, once I got older and realized that there was an actual Indiana Jones show, I watched a couple, but I'd never got into it again. It just felt bad. I mean, it's okay. It's fine for what it is. I think it doesn't follow. I think Lucas wasn't trying to follow some TV mold and making these. I know like season 2 or they tried to do season 3. I can't remember, but they were only going to do like 4 made for TV movies that they ended up breaking into smaller episodes. So I feel like he was just kind of like, I can do whatever I want because I'm George Lucas.
Sure. And then it failed.
And then it failed. Yeah.
It sounds like you watched this a bunch.
Well, I mentioned on one of our episodes that I had some of these episodes on tape that were just recorded off the television, and I would watch those over and over again, and I love them. And it was only a few, and the ones that stand out in my mind, he mentions it in this episode of when he joins the Belgian army, and that is an episode. And I remember just being enthralled by that story where he's in World War I, he's in the trenches, the Germans are using like mustard gas, and it looks really good. At least in my memory, it looked really good. And I love that. And then there's another one where he's somehow he gets into North Africa, like he's fighting there, and then he has a mission down the Congo River, and he's like on this boat with this crew where they have this mission to go down, and that really stands out in my mind. And then there's another one where he's like a secret agent, I think, in France, or he's like helping the resistance. So those episodes stand out in my mind. And actually, as I was watching this, I had seen this before.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, this is because as I'm watching it, it's like I know this story, but I couldn't like when I first put it on, I didn't remember it. But as I was watching it, it was very clearly that I'd seen it before.
Nice. And what's kind of funny though is even though George Lucas does his own thing and flopped, his intentions of making a children's to teenagers type show that each episode would have a figure from history and it would try to give a little history lesson on this person. So like in our episode, we have Elliot Ness, who's an actual agent fighting the Prohibition. And he's also featured in the movie I just watched, The Untouchables. Kevin Costner played Elliot Ness in that movie. So it's still kind of like trying to weave bits of history and this action story for kids and teenagers.
Yeah, it's fun because it's like every famous character in the last 100 years of American history knows Indiana Jones like throughout this series.
Right, exactly. There's like an episode where he runs into like Picasso and Norman Rockwell on the same episode. And it makes like no sense, but it's amazing.
Yeah, when I sat down and watched the episode, Harrison Ford is like infamous for this is the one that Harrison Ford is in. And I'm like sitting down to watch this, one of my initial impressions is I'm going to be one of those nerds that felt like icky seeing Harrison Ford in a television show as Indy. Like it felt kind of low rent,
right?
Like low budget. They're driving around this truck in some random snowfield. And it looks, like they had a budget of maybe 10 grand doing this thing. And even the cabin they go in and his delivery of these lines, I was like, oh my God, this is so weird. And he has this beard. He looks pretty cool. Like he has this beard, which I think he was filming The Fugitive at the time. So they just kind of like, phoned him over. Hey, do you have a half day to film these scenes? Is that what happened when they did this episode?
Yeah, he was just starting Fugitive and he had the beard at the time, which worked out because it was Wyoming in the 50s, I think. So he's got to be older anyway than we saw him in the movies. So yeah, he was just doing some fugitive work at the time.
And I think the way it lines up, this is maybe like 8 years before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull takes place. So his appearance in this is pretty close to that time frame. My first thought and note while watching this, I thought this thing was really long. This 2-hour format,
really
90-minute format is very strange. The
Mhm.
first half of this, I'm like, what is the plot of this thing? Is he just going to be learning jazz for 90 minutes and kind of understanding the plight of the African American community? Because halfway through, Sid, his musician friend, just kind of like disappears.
Yeah.
And it's a murder mystery with characters that, barely were in the first half.
Yeah.
So it made me wonder, I was like, how the hell did they air this? Was it a two-parter? I don't know. What did you think, Proto, rewatching this for the first time in a while?
Yeah, I had the same thought that the first bit is pretty long. And yeah, it feels out of the normal mold of a TV show. I don't know, maybe shows were like this back in the 90s. I don't really remember. But in a way it was kind of, I was enjoying myself. I think it's maybe because I just love this character so much, and I have a special place in my heart for Sean Patrick Flannery as well. I watched this as a kid, and like just seeing him again be Indy, wearing the same clothes, the same shoes. He has the hat, walking around on the beach, playing a saxophone. I don't know, there's just something about it. It's very endearing to like this character. I knew at some point it was going to like flip a switch and go somewhere else. But the first 40 minutes or so, you're kind of like, your eyes are darting back and forth of like, what am I watching right now?
Right. I'm waiting for the John Williams score to kick in and for Indy to pull out his whip and some action to take place. Cause this jazz bit, I mean, I'm not a big fan of jazz to begin with. So it felt like 3 hours getting to any sort of murder mystery.
Adventure, yeah. We should mention that Sid is played by Jeffrey Wright.
Who's awesome.
Yeah.
One of his early roles. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I did not enjoy Jeffrey Wright in this episode.
Really?
I don't know if it was his delivery as the character. I was like, man, get off my screen. You're so annoying. I don't know what it was. I just didn't connect with his character at all, which kind of sucks because he's in half the 90-minute thing, like teaching Indy and being his friend.
That's impressive. I liked how he, I don't know. He has that look that he can give you, like he gave Indy, like that would pierce him. Like, you idiot. Get off my stage. But he wasn't like rude or like to him. He just kind of gave him the look. Like, buddy, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Indy, we're playing jazz.
I think that's his voice. I mean, that is the voice. Picture that for 90 minutes of a guy telling Indiana Jones that he can't jazz just yet.
He wasn't calling him Jonesy.
Yeah, that was interesting.
So good. Yeah.
What was on your list, Danny, for this viewing?
Well, I didn't take too many notes because I was a little bit bored. But I actually really liked. I liked the first half a lot because I liked. I don't know. I enjoyed Indy kind of learning the ropes of African American culture in Chicago at the time, and when he has to have dinner with the black family after church one day, and the dad and son are having that argument, like the dad doesn't want the son going out to the riots and causing a ruckus for change, but the son fought in the army, and what does he get now that he's come back to America as a black man? And it was impressive. I mean, this was back in the 90s, and I guess George was trying something hard. Mm-hmm. But I that was what kind of like the first few thoughts was I was impressed that they took on sort of a race issue with Indy. Yeah,
that was a big piece of this episode. I mean, even him getting accepted into their group to go to the No Whites Allowed club, and Sid vouching for him, and then eventually playing on stage at the club.
Yeah. That was interesting to watch because you don't see it portrayed very much. I mean, if you think about the 90s, which we were kids, but the idea of what we would have seen would have been like blacks not being allowed into things, but we watched Indy in a space where he wasn't allowed and how blacks were responding to him in their space, which I thought was an interesting take.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a kid watching this, this is pretty informative and, could maybe be beneficial. I don't know how many people were actually watching this at the time. Probably not any, because I think it was canceled by this point, or maybe even when this came out. Part of your thoughts, anything on your list?
The one shot that I really liked, I'm not sure how they do it. I'm assuming it's a miniature, but where they show the train pulling in and out of the Chicago. There's a few transitions where it's going between scenes, and it would just have like this this cityscape and this train. I'm assuming it's like a model that would just like pull in and out of the city. And I enjoyed that. I thought that was cool. I don't know. I like to me, like the production for what it is feels pretty good for this TV, for a TV series like this, because, it's not all CGI. This is like early 90s. So it's all real. Like all these cars, they have some stunts in this, like the warehouse stuff where, they got, like cars, barrels, crates, them zip lining. I don't know why this warehouse is set up this way, but it's like an amusement park for Indy to like pull all these stunts with his roommate.
I was waiting for a box to fall over and it'd be like the Ark of the Covenant or something, like a crystal or something like that. Like another warehouse where Indy's climbing boxes.
Yeah, the one thing that I notated in my notes was I couldn't remember if he even mentioned archaeology once, or it was like hard for my head to wrap around him having adventures that didn't revolve around archaeology. Like, because I'm so not used to this TV show and how it was kind of portrayed. Him just trying to like solve a murder was like, well, this is so weird. Is he going to mention some kind of old relic at some point? Like my brain couldn't wrap itself around it.
Also, him being a terrible student, like not going to class, having no interest. But in the movies, he's like this genius who knows everything.
Yeah, like he obviously did his homework and stayed late, and maybe on weekends was grave robbing. How about the corpse of the restaurant owner being propped up in that parade? Did you catch that shot?
So
that was
weird.
Disturbing.
Yeah.
I guess that was the culture back then, where they just prop up that guy's body in like in like some kind of weird suit and just watch him go by.
It felt like a mob thing.
My other note was the size of the bread on their sandwiches that they were eating. What the French was going on with that bread? At first I thought they were just eating loaves of bread while they were researching, but then I saw that there was like meat in there.
They were the size of footballs. and there's like 3 pieces of ham in between it, and they all have one, and none of them are acting like it's strange at all.
It was so weird. I've never seen a sandwich that large before. It was so bizarre.
Oh yeah, so I mentioned the warehouse scene, but the amount of merchandise that these goons have destroyed in this man's warehouse trying to kill these 3 students, and then they catch him, and that guy, I guess the O'Banion who owned the warehouse or whatever, was his stuff. These guys, they ruined the 3 trucks, trash his warehouse, and then he doesn't even like slap them on the wrist. He gives them a rose and lets them walk out. Like, dude, how much money did you just lose because these 3 kids are poking around in your warehouse and you're not going to do anything? You're friends with like the police chief. You got to do something here.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense whatsoever. He could have easily just slit their throats and threw them in the river, and that would have been the end of the episode.
I know we DM'd about this, but how about Sean Patrick Flannery's hair?
Oh, yeah.
Like, don't even put the fedora on, buddy.
Yeah.
You don't need it. You look good the way it is.
Holy moly. I was pretty shocked by, again, I hadn't seen any of the previous episodes, him mentioning how he was in the war. He I felt like he was 14 in this episode. And he was talking about the trials of like being in war. And I was like, whoa, this is wild stuff that he's going through right now.
Yeah. Yeah. To think like, he's at university, but he has seen more action than I have at this point in his life.
Excuse me?
But he did say like he joined at 16. So it still kind of lines up. But it would be interesting to, watch them all sequentially and to see like everything that he's supposed to have gone through up until this point, if he went through the war.
God, he'd be stressed out.
Wild life for old Indy.
He would not be alive for episode or movie 5 at this point.
No.
There'd be too much stress going on for him.
This is why his shoulders hurt.
The amount of radiation coursing through his veins.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean,
The ending was
mhm.
one of my notes. Literally, my ending is holy s. This ending, what on earth?
I
they
could not
s-
stop laughing.
They solve. I guess you could say there's two endings, but they solve the case, and the cop is a corrupt cop and tells him to beat it. So at that point, I was like, okay, there's going to be like 10 more minutes of Indy kind of taking care of business here and
No.
righting a wrong. He's going to get Capone or he's going to get someone involved in this murder. It doesn't happen. They
No.
kind of just commiserate and be like, this sucks. I'm going overseas to become a writer. And then that's it. That's the story. They don't get it solved. They fail and it ends.
I love that Ernest Hemingway, because he can't solve this murder, is going to Europe to become a writer.
I couldn't believe that there was no real resolution to the actual murder. I just thought
And the
that was so
actor
bizarre.
that was playing that cop was hamming it up.
Oh my
Like,
God.
the slow rip of the paper and his fingers in the air. And I was just like, man, I love this guy.
Mm.
That's the blues for you.
And then, wasn't it right after that Sid appears
Right,
for
and
the
then
first
it
time,
cut-
like an hour?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, come on, let's go to the club, play some blues.
Now you can play
Jonesy.
it. Now you get it.
Now you can play the blues.
Jeffrey Wright doing that like head down eye thing. Ooh,
Yes.
Jonesy.
So good. Thank God he learned glasses.
So after this episode, I did track down on Paramount Plus the first episode because I wanted to watch, what was the start of this. So I did
kid.
watch, he's young, super young Indiana Jones. His dad, Sean Connery's character is in the show, a young version of him. He tries to get his tutor or like his high school teacher to teach Indy as a young child. So they go on this like kind of like vacation to Egypt, and they get into hijinks with like it might have been even King Tut's tomb. I can't remember who it was. So there is that kind of like educational aspect of it, which I thought was pretty interesting. It seemed like this looks, in my mind, it looked better than this episode. Like the budget probably for the pilot was maybe higher.
Yeah.
But there was no old man Indy in these bookends. So the only way you can really watch that is, I think, probably on the original versions that maybe were distributed or on YouTube. So that's how
YouTube, yeah.
I rewatched it, the intro on YouTube to see what it was like. And I guess they replaced the voiceovers in the current versions with young Indiana Jones. So very interesting how there's multiple versions of this, like another franchise by someone. But I thought that was pretty wild.
Yeah. One thing I don't want to gloss over real quick is the ending of this episode with Harrison
Oh,
and
God.
what he does
yes.
with that
Oh, God.
saxophone. That's what I couldn't
Forgot
stop
about this.
laughing about.
Nails
So we
it.
have the bookends of another story outside of a story. And so after was the peace pipe that he was trying to steal for his Native American friend, they come in and take it from him with guns without bullets. And it's just him playing the note on a saxophone to cause an avalanche on the roof to stop the bad guys might be more insane than him surviving a nuclear blast in a fridge.
They've got the pipe.
Well, things can't always be the way you want them to be. But sometimes they are.
Couldn't believe what I was seeing.
His face he makes when he blows on that
Yes.
sax.
That should have been the art. Him with the sax in his mouth.
I was howling. I could not stop laughing.
Well, I even didn't even see it coming because the bad guys come in, they steal it back. As soon as they steal it, Indy nonchalantly turns around. He's like, you win some, you lose some. They're like not even out of the room yet. He just holds his sax. It's back down. And I'm like, Indy, wake up, bro. Go get it back. And then he starts playing the notes. And then the snow falls on them and they leave and go get it. It was unbelievable.
And
The hand sticking out of the snow, perfectly
hand.
holding it. Oh my gosh. So funny.
So bizarre. Oh, Indy.
This was actually the only time that they played the John Williams Raiders March in all of the episodes.
Interesting. I wonder
Which I
if
thought was
maybe
wild.
I wonder if that's why it's not on Paramount.
Maybe that and the fact that Harrison's in it.
Yeah, some kind of
I
weird
just wonder.
rights thing.
Hmm.
You know, this took place 4 or 5 years after Last Crusade. Man, it would have been cool if they made some more Indiana Jones movies in that time frame.
Oh my
Like-
gosh.
Like, just seeing him back in costume with a beard. I want some
Mhm.
more of that. Let's have a winter Indiana Jones movie with
Ooh.
him with a beard whipping
Mm.
around.
Oh,
You know,
I'm into it.
I like it. George, you listening?
George, please. Anything we didn't cover, Proto, from your list?
No, that's it. I'm just looking at these episodes. I'm going to see where I'm going to go back and what I'm going to watch.
I know. I might just watch the ones on Paramount since the quality will be at least nice.
Mm.
Yeah, the quality was definitely better. I will say I did not like the old Indiana Jones character in what I saw. I thought it was disturbing. And
Harrison?
No, the old man Indiana, like the
Oh, yeah.
90-year-old Indiana
Yes.
Jones. George was
Hall.
absolutely right to remove that from the current editions. This is like the one, yes, George, you're right to edit your own work. Please remove him from the series. Never.
I
have him
might
back
do
again.
some George Hall Indiana Jones art and see who notices it on my Instagram page.
That would be hilarious. Just him doing like similar poses to Indy, but like as an old man in that patch.
Oh man, that'd be
Holy
amazing.
Lord. Anything else, Danny, that we didn't cover for this episode?
No, that's about it. Yeah. I mean, I had fun watching it, but it's a drag. It's
Yeah.
a long one.
It is long. I will say that I did have fun going back to that first episode and just kind of having it on the background. It's a good background show. I wouldn't really devote 2 hours per episode to these things, 100% focused, but
There are some moments that I had pulled up that I don't have pulled up anymore, but there are some callback moments to not to the movies because they hadn't happened. Well, technically in the timeline they hadn't happened, but they mention a couple things like the Peacock's Eye again gets brought up, and that's the diamond in Temple, and digging into like more of Indy's father I liked, and a couple of the ones that I had seen. So I think it was really cool that they did it. I feel like now if they did this on Disney Plus, it would be like a smash hit.
oh my God.
Like
Yeah.
it would be bonkers.
The
Like
amount-
absolutely insane.
The amount of IP they're sitting on that they could produce for Disney Plus, that would be insane right
Like
now.
incredible.
Yeah, this stuff is so much fun. I mean, Indiana Jones is a gold mine property and character. There's just so
Mhm.
much. It's endless. You could just tell endless stories of his past and the history and just do the same thing. Like have historical figures in it. Go buck wild. Who cares?
Yeah.
God. George, you listening?
George?
Or are you
What's
still
Sean
listening?
Patrick Flannery doing now after Boondock Saints 2 flopped?
Boondock Saints 3, probably.
Nope. I hope not.
There you have it. Indiana Jones, The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, The Mystery of the Blues. We'll see if that even fits on our episode description, let alone the art that you've made, which I love, by the way.
Thank you.
Indiana Jones completes very soon. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull will be our next episode. Closing thoughts, Proto, before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
I would recommend giving the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles a chance. Maybe not this episode. This might not be the one to start with. But check your Paramount Plus. I would recommend. I was just looking at the episodes now. I think in season 1, you do episode 5. You get right into Indy in the Great War, serving with the Belgian army. And I'm reading these, and every summary I'm reading of these episodes, I remember it. So I must have watched a lot of this.
Nice.
There you have it. You have your marching orders from Proto. Live recos for Young Indiana Jones. Never thought I'd say that sentence out loud. We'll see everybody for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. 70mm is a tape deck production featuring original artwork provided by Danny Haas. Spiritual guidance and V'ger, the robot who loves movies, created by Predalexis. Producer Emeritus, Dale _A. Prints and other merch are available on 70mmpod.com. This episode was mixed, edited, and produced by me, Slim. You can support our Patreon for access to the VHS Village Discord to talk movies with new friends, access to exclusive episodes, discounts on merch, and a physical membership card mailed to you. To check out other Tape Deck podcasts, find the link in the episode notes. And if you'd like to support our friends at Letterboxd and upgrade to pro or patron status, you can do so with a 20% off discount using the links at 70mmpod.com. Goodbye.
This is a Tape Deck podcast.